Why do some people do so well in life, while so many more do not? And the first thing let's talk about is the magic word. The experts call it the most important word as far as the results we get from life are concerned in this or any other language. And that word is attitude. It is our attitude toward life which will determine life's attitude toward us. Let's face the fact honestly that we shape our own lives, and the shapes of them will be determined by our attitudes. A person with a poor attitude toward learning, for example, isn't going to learn much until he changes his attitude. If we take the attitude that we cannot do something, we generally will not do it. An attitude of failure, and we're whipped before we start. So we know then that what we receive from life, what we accomplish or fail to accomplish, is due in large measure to our overall attitude. William James of Harvard University put it this way: "The greatest discovery of my generation is that human beings can alter their lives by altering their attitudes of mind." And isn't it wonderful that we have this measure of control? Before we start talking about our attitude toward the world, let's talk about our attitude toward ourselves, since it is the attitude we take toward ourselves which determines our attitude toward the world. Now right here we come to a rather strange fact. We're so familiar with ourselves, we tend to take ourselves for granted. We tend to minimize the things we can accomplish, the goals we can reach, and for some equally strange reason, believe others can accomplish things in our field which we cannot. There are literally millions of human beings living narrow, darkened, frustrated lives, living defensively, simply because they take a defensive, doubtful attitude toward themselves, and as a result, toward life in general. Many people are suspicious of and oppose change. Yet change is the one thing in life on which we can absolutely count. People who stay young all the years of their lives not only welcome change, but see it for what it really is: new opportunity, new chances for further fulfillment. Attitude is a reflection, a result of a person's will. It is incalculably powerful. It can bring about marvelous results for us, but we need to train it patiently, day by day. Now let's talk about the attitudes of people who are successful. The top 5% of the people who go sailing through life from one success to another, and who, even when they fail at something, shrug it off and head right out again. No matter who the person is or what he does, men and women in sales, business executives, people in all the professions, wives and mothers, students, top people in the armed forces, public servants, men and women in the service of religion, working men and women in all fields of endeavor, wherever you find a person doing an outstanding job and getting outstanding results, you will find a person with the right kind of attitude. These people take the attitude toward themselves that they can accomplish what they set out to accomplish, that there's no good reason on earth why they can't be competent, successful. They have a healthy attitude toward themselves and, as a result, toward life and the things they want to accomplish. And because of this, they achieve some remarkable things, and they come to be called successful, outstanding, brilliant, lucky, and a lot of other things. They're quite frequently no more brilliant or outstanding than the majority of the people by whom they're surrounded. But they did develop the right attitude, and they found their accomplishments not too difficult, and many times surprisingly easy, simply because it seems that so few are really trying, really believe in themselves. Successful people come in all shapes and sizes and in widely varying degrees of intelligence, background, and so on. But they all have one thing in common. They expect more good out of life than bad. They expect to succeed more than they fail. If you want something worthwhile, take the attitude that there are a lot more reasons why you can have it than there are that you cannot, and set out to earn it. Go after it, work at it, ask for it, and 9 times out of 10, you'll get it. Our environment is really a mirror of our mental attitude. If we don't like our environment, we have to change our attitude first. Now, the world plays no favorites. It's impersonal. It doesn't care whether we change or not. Adopting a good, healthy attitude toward life doesn't affect the world and the people in it nearly as much as it affects us. It would be impossible to even estimate the number of jobs which have been lost, the number of promotions missed, the number of sales not made, the number of marriages ruined by poor attitudes. But you can number in the millions the jobs which are held but hated, the marriages which are tolerated but unhappy, all because of people who are waiting for the world and others to change toward them, instead of being big enough and wise enough to at least make a test which will prove beyond any shadow of a doubt where most or at least a big part of the trouble lies. Studies made of the lives of literally thousands of successful people have shown that they radiate confidence, assurance, they expect success, and they get success. You can spot these people by the way they walk, by the way they look and act. You can feel it about them when they enter a room. They may be short and fat, or tall and thin, or any combination in between, but they have about them the attitude of success. In the record Greener Pastures, I'll get into this next statement, but right now I want you to realize, if you don't already, that in 5 years or less, you can get right to the top of the work you're now doing. I know this, but the important question here is, do you know this? The minute you do know it, you'll have this right attitude I'm talking about. The easiest and most effective means of forming a good attitude habit is to begin to act as though you have a good, positive, expectant attitude toward life. That's right. Begin right now to walk, act, and look as though you belong to this group. If you're already in the top 5%, you'll know what I mean. If you've never tried it, you'll be amazed at what happens. Actions trigger feelings, just as feelings trigger actions. Now, let me tell you of a little test you can make which will prove beyond any shadow of a doubt that a good attitude can change a person's life as dramatically as walking from a darkened room into the bright, clear light of day. Not long ago, I read a line which went, "Life is dull only to dull people." This is true, but it also could have read, "Life is interesting only to interesting people," or "Life is successful only to successful people." And what I'm trying to say is that you must first become, mentally, from an attitude standpoint, that which you wish to achieve. A famous restaurateur was being interviewed by a reporter who asked, "When did you become successful?" He replied, "I was successful when I was sleeping on park benches, because I knew what I wanted to do and that I would do it." In short, his attitude had been one of success, of expecting success, long before the material, the tangible rewards of success had been earned. We'll get into this particular phase of Lead the Field in record number 3, A Worthy Destination. But for now, remember that a person must act, look, and because of these things, feel successful before the success he seeks can come. Chances are you know people who seem to be what others call lucky. All kinds of good and wonderful things seem to happen to them, and they give the impression of happily sailing through life, having a wonderful time, and getting more accomplished in a year than most people do in 5. This has been figured out fairly scientifically, and if anyone will conscientiously go about the test I'm going to recommend, and stay with it every day for the next 30 days without fail, that person can join this small, happy, and extremely productive group of people. He'll find himself becoming lucky, as they say, and most of his problems will pretty well take care of themselves. Of this you can be sure. The results will be nothing short of amazing. Now, it makes no difference how good a person's attitude has been in the past. Anything can be improved upon, and it's the small refinements upon something already good that makes it great. So here's the test. For the next 30 days, act toward the world, everything and everyone with whom you come in contact, with the attitude which represents the kind of results you want to achieve. That is, if the result you want is more success in what you're doing, act as though you are already in possession of the success you seek. If you want others to treat you with admiration and respect, treat others with admiration and respect first. Have you ever stopped to think of this? If every human being on earth is the most important human being on earth as far as he or she is concerned. You may never get anyone to admit it, but it's a fact. So for the next 30 days, treat every person with whom you come in contact as the most important person on earth, remembering as you do so that as far as that person is concerned, he is. Now, the reason I say treat everyone in this fashion is mainly because this is the way human beings ought to treat each other, and because it will help you form a habit that will bring you amazing and delightful results for the rest of your life.
To begin our exploration of important ideas, we'll examine attitude, the one thing that comes very close to being everything about success or failure. And we'll learn about the 5 areas of life where successful people experience more joy and satisfaction because of their attitudes. Earl once said, "A great attitude does much more than turn on the lights and bring up the music in our worlds. It seems to magically connect us to all sorts of opportunities that were somehow absent before the change." But in order to take full advantage of these wonderful opportunities, there must be an energy, an enthusiasm that will transform our attitudes into action.
That is, there's one word that describes a condition that will bring us all of these things or keep us from getting any one of them. It's been called the most important word on earth. If your youngster asks you what this word is, could you tell him? And if from all the many thousands of words in the language you were asked to select the one that would influence your life more than any other, could you pick the right word? In our language, it's pronounced attitude. Once we're grown and on our own, this word actually controls our environment, our entire world. You see, if your attitude toward the world is good, you'll obtain good results. If your attitude is excellent, you'll obtain excellent results. And if your attitude is just so-so, well, you'll live in a world that is not particularly bad nor particularly good, just so-so. Now, if you're curious about what kind of an attitude you have, a simple test will tell you what your attitude's been up to this point in your life. Just answer this question with a yes or no. Do you feel the world is treating you well? If your answer is a quick yes, your attitude is good. If your answer is no, your attitude is bad. And if you have trouble deciding, your attitude is probably average. You see, our environment, which is another way of saying how the world treats us, is nothing more than a reflection, a merciless mirror, actually, of our own attitude. It doesn't mean you can pick the winner at the track or bet on the right team. There are too many variables in such things. But we get from life what we tend to expect from it. We do the things we make up our minds to do, live in the towns or areas we want to live in, and work at the jobs of our choice once we learn the magic of putting our minds and attitudes to work in our lives. The person with the attitude that he can't do something will seldom do it. We do know that over the long haul, we tend to get what we expect from life. Because we tend to get what we really expect from life, it makes a lot of sense to choose to be optimistic rather than pessimistic. How many times have you heard someone say, or perhaps have said yourself, with my kind of luck, such and such is bound to happen, indicating that your luck is generally bad and that you expect the worst. Even when people find themselves enjoying a sudden stroke of good fortune, they'll often say, well, it's too good to last, again indicating that they expect their fortunes in life to be generally bad. Now, this must be a hangover from times going back to the Dark Ages, and perhaps before, when life was 1,000 times more precarious than it is today. As recently as 100 years ago, if you cut your toe and blood poisoning, as it was called, set in, you could be a goner. The mortality rate for children was astronomical and almost as high for adults. If a person reached his 30th birthday, it called for a real celebration. In fact, birthday celebrations for any age took on importance simply because getting from one to another was no little achievement. Now couple this with the almost total ignorance of the times, widespread illiteracy, and lives governed by superstition, and you can understand why people tended to be slightly on the pessimistic side, but that's in the past. And even then, it was the optimists who were responsible for what little forward movement occurred. Pessimists aren't builders. They're more often stumbling blocks. Instead of looking for the reasons something can be done or tried, they tend to look for reasons why it won't work. A pessimist is a real reactionary. He tends to go backward. He resists anything new and untried. He's the person who says the bottle is half empty instead of half full, or that the weather is partly cloudy instead of partly sunny. He dwells on his past failures and forgets his successes. He'll come up with 100 reasons for not doing something instead of a single good reason for doing it. He likes to say no to people, and as a result, says no to life. And getting back to that quote of Norman Cousins, perhaps the biggest fault of a pessimist is that he thinks he knows more than he does. He doesn't know about the power of enthusiasm and a good attitude. He won't move forward until all the lights ahead turn green, and thus never moves, because all the lights are never green at any one time. A person has to learn to be a pessimist. Children are the most wonderful optimists and think anything at all is possible. It must be in the home that... Psychologists have demonstrated that our idea of reality is determined by our perception of things, the way our senses interpret things, rather than the way things really are. Edward T. Hall has written that the relationship between man and the cultural dimension is one in which both man and his environment participate in molding each other. Man is now in the position of actually creating the total world in which he lives. In creating this world, he is actually determining what kind of an organism he'll be. Carl Sandburg, Dorothy Lee, Benjamin Lee Whorf, Edward Hall, and numerous others have told us in essence that we create our own space. Now, what does this mean? Well, as with Albert Einstein, it means that space is relative. Unlike Newtonian physicists, Einstein did not conceive of space as an absolute entity in relation to which things are organized. Quite the contrary, he defined space as the relationship that exists among things as a result of their organization. Well, the tendency for reality to be a self-fulfilling prophecy rather than an absolute given has been explained by some modern anthropologists. Dorothy Lee does a good job of it in Freedom and Culture. And what all this means for you and me is that our individual worlds will respond to us in the way in which we see them. They will become for us what we expect of them. We are the creators of our own surroundings.
What role does attitude play in a person's success or failure is a lot like asking, what role does granite play in the Himalayas? Or what role does a good parent play in the home? The answer is, attitude is the very foundation for success. But the majority of people in the United States are not successful people in any of the fundamental categories that make a difference. What are these important categories? One, recognition. Successful people give more recognition to others than do unsuccessful people. Two, self-esteem. This comes in part from recognition, and it also comes from the knowledge that one is in charge of his or her life and that it's proceeding along its planned route. Number three, rewards. The rewards of success come in many forms, not the least of which is in the form of money. Successful people earn more money than unsuccessful people and enjoy investing and spending it. They live in better dwellings, drive better cars, they travel more, they meet more interesting people, and have infinitely more options. Successful people don't have to spend the final years of their lives, which, for successful people, are usually the best years of their lives, in limited or unfortunate circumstances. Successful people tend to enjoy life more and tend to enjoy more of their years. Number four, change. The stimulation of change in our lives is of great importance. In fact, some experts in such matters believe change to be the second most important want on the part of people everywhere, right after recognition. Successful people have much more stimulation and change in their lives. They can go more places, do more things, meet more people. They're not stuck anywhere. Number five, service. Successful people do a better job of serving others than do unsuccessful people, or they would not be successful. Their very success gives them more options and more freedom to be of service to others through foundations, libraries, hospitals, universities, the arts. The successful people of the country serve without fanfare by giving their time and money to charitable organizations of all kinds.
Back from our world, what we expect from it. If one has a hearty, positive attitude, he lives in a wonderful world, a world of endless possibilities. And he's able to act on those possibilities with enthusiasm. This person finds it in himself, gets it from others, and gives it away liberally. It's a zest for life, a way to keep routine things from seeming routine, and a readiness for the next opportunity to fulfill his potential.